Humans of the Cardboard, we are about 1 month away from getting CYBERSTORM access, the next big core set in Yu-Gi-Oh! Very exciting. I like to play competitively, so in that nature, I want to talk about the competitive viability. What's going to change? What in this set is going to change the landscape of the competitive scene as we know and love it? Now, it's also important to note that by the time we're getting this set, we may be alive for a ban list, but we're going to ignore the ideas of any ban lists existing at that time, and we're just going to focus on what's going on right now and what we will expect post this new future set. Very exciting. So we're going to start with we're going to go through 3 sections. The first one we're going to start with is new decks. So decks that have just literally not been competitive either in a while, or it's literally a brand new deck that enter the format, enter the fray, and I think do have some potential. From there, we will move to decks that have already been in the game, already have been at least a rogue deck, and from there get more support in this set. That's, the next section. And then from there, we'll move to generic cards that don't really pertain to any one specific deck, but could apply generically to the format and could just be cards to keep an eye on to see more often. That one, I think if you want to look at the most recent example of that, you could say Triple Tactic Tasking for Photon Hypernova. I know that card hasn't really materialized yet in the competitive scene that much very well, but I think we can all agree when we read that card, it will come up in formats down the line for sure. So let's get started. Let's start off with the brand new archetypes, and not brand new, but new to the competitive scene at least. First and foremost, I think this is maybe the most impactful thing in the entire set. It's the new Super Heavy Samurai stuff. If you do not know, these cards are going pretty wild in the OCG, and they also just got a ban list that hit like everything else and left these cards alone. So this engine's insane. Without using your normal summon and just having a way to Wakaushi, you are able to get a ton of resources and like 2 negates. It's crazy. There's a lot of different ways it can do, because it just puts like 2 level 4s on the field, and 1's a tuner, so you can make a Synchro 8 early in a play before you commit to your other engine. You can, make a Barone, I believe, with it. You can make rank 4s and, make different rank 4s that search you cards and get you to your engines that way. This engine is absolutely insane. If you do not know much about it, definitely delve more into it. I don't want to spend too much time on any one thing because we have a lot to get to. From there, we move to Pirelli. This is a deck that's also been performing pretty well in the OCG. Very good control deck that kind of is like a Protect the Castle type deck where you make the Pirelli Exceed Monster Noir. That card is a pseudo Towers that also gets a non-once per turn ability to shuffle cards back into the deck. That card is insanely unfair, and the deck facilitates it really well. I mean, it's seems straightforward deck. So if you like simple decks that are just good at what they do, this may be one of the decks for you. But it is pretty one note, it feels like. So just keep an eye on that. But the new cards are very helpful. The new main deck monster in Lily, as well as the new quick play spell Sleepy Memory. And also keep in mind, they probably should be getting another card or 2 in the next set as well. Moving on. Monodome is new to the scene. It's the next Visa Starfrost archetype. It's a cool one. It's synchro based. They have some really powerful tuner monsters that are like not once per turn. If they're destroyed, they summon another like name for the deck, or at least one of them does. This guy's pretty good, Ruumhart. He's just another searcher, but also extends himself. Pretty good card. They'll probably get more support here as well, but the engine does seem nice. It just definitely feels like it needs to be combined with other stuff. I don't know exactly what stuff that will be just yet, but there's definitely some high potential here. Moving on, Bistro. This is a weird one because obviously Bistrals have been relevant competitively, but only really as, Dragon Link or, just hand traps more so during like tier format and a little bit in the side decks right now. I think Bistro can become its own deck post this support, potentially. It's important to note the OCG's been messing around with a Bistro Synchro strategy where they use some of the new tuners they've gotten recently. We get one of those tuners in this set, but we don't get Assault Synchron, and that one could be the difference between it being fully playable or not. But I still feel like there might be enough there to still try and make something out of it, even in this format. So keep an eye on that. The new boss monster is awesome. Dispater is insane. And we do get Ringo Worm here. He is a level 2 tuner, and if you've synchro summoned this turn, he can just like banish himself to summon you a level 2 token. That's a tuner. So like essentially 2 level 2 tuner bodies off of this card. You can take advantage of Shinobi Necro as well very, very easily in the deck. It's definitely a deck to keep an eye on. I think it may be more rogue right now. Maybe Assault Synchron is the kind of card that will push it to the next level, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on because it's pretty open-ended, and people may find another way that the OCG didn't go to make it work in the TCG even now. So keep an eye on that. Teller Knights. Teller Knights have been gone from the competitive scene for like, I don't know, what are we creeping up on? Like 7 or 8 years? Something like that. They get a really nice wave of support here. Now, they're rogue. They're not going to be high-end competitive, but I think rogue decks are worth mentioning in videos like this because any competitive player worth their salt like is not just going to make sure they have an idea of just what the top 3 decks in the game do. Like, you need to learn what these rogue matchups do because, you know, one round can be the difference between you topping or not in a tournament, and so it behooves you to know as many of these rogue matchups that could be decent decks in any given tournament that you could play one of, and if you don't know anything about it, you can just lose to not knowing what it does. So it's a good idea to keep an eye on these. They're cool. I still think they're a little fragile. They're a little bit too combo-oriented for my personal taste. I used to love the style they used to play. But there's power here. And if somebody figures it out, best way to make it work and a way to kind of protect your plays as you do them, there's definitely a world where this deck can definitely see some results. It saw a handful of results in the OCG. I don't know why it couldn't do it here. So, cool deck. And I think the last one for new archetypes, Gold Pride. Gold Pride, you could argue technically Gold Pride Punk is technically a rogue deck right now. I don't know if it's quite there right now. I'd rather just play pure Punk at this point. But we're getting on a whole new wave. We have no idea what the cards are, so this is kind of like a jank one where I'm kind of throwing it out there. We don't have the cards yet. I just made a video talking about what I'd like to see from the new support. But I do think that they have a nice start. I do think, you know, if the second wave is just okay, it could be in a good position to be a good rogue deck. But we'll obviously have to wait and see what we get there. Now we move to the... What? This one doesn't even have artwork? Okay. We move to the decks that already exist that are getting even more support. I hate this. Branded is on here, or Despia, whatever you want to call it. They get multiple good cards in this set. It's so frustrating. I'm tired of this deck, honestly. It's one of the decks that I struggle playing against every time. I think a lot of the rogue decks I play just end up really having not great matchups against it. But yeah, Guiding Quem, really nice card for them. Really good main deck monster for them. They also get a new dragon that can reborn any monsters from graveyard, which is insane. And they also get a new Despia monster. Now, this card could actually apply to a couple of different decks, but I don't know if those decks are as relevant as this one. But the idea here is with the Grand Guignol dragon, the new one, he can summon any Despia from extra. So he can just cheat this card out on the opponent's turn, and this card is just an interruption. And it also floats into any light spellcaster with the same attack and defense. So that, I believe, is Blazing Cartesia. I believe that's also Guiding Quem. So they'll have at least 2 good targets there to just get off of this as a float, and it's an interruption. Don't hate it. It's not bad. It makes Grand Guignol a little bit better, but of course they have to make room for it in the extra. So we'll see. But the fact that they get 3 more cards and they're just all good cards is like wild to me. That Konami's still doing this. I hope they get hit on the ban list. Moving on. Vicious Astral decks, or Visa Starfrost decks. All of them. So that means technically Scareclaw gets a nice buff here. This means Kashtira technically could be getting... This could almost count as a buff for them. We'll have to see. And then also Monodome, the new archetype. You could throw that in here as well. This one card is amazing. It says if you have Vicious Astral or Visa Starfrost or plus one of the monsters that has 1500 attack, 2100 defense. So any of the hearts. So Monodome, Ruinheart, all the Stratos monsters. Monodome, Ruinheart, Scareclaw, Reichheart. I guess this other one's not as... Rise Heart for Kashtira is not a Stratos, but still. The 1500 attack, 2100 defense. If they are on field or in grave, you can banish them to summon this guy straight out of the extra deck. So he cheats himself out, just like ABC Dragon Buster, one of the best summoning mechanics we've ever seen. And on summon, it like pops a monster, gains attack, and can't be destroyed by battle. 3k attack, 3k defense, level 8 monster. This card is so crazy. It's going to help you play through boards a lot better, because even if they stop everything else, as long as you get those cards on field or in grave, they can now go into Vicious Shroud and threaten you from there. This card is crazy. It's definitely going to come up. Keep an eye on this one. Right now, Scareclaw, I think, is the best deck that makes use of this card right now, but we'll see. Next up, Tri-Brigade. Tri-Brigade Sprite is kind of like floating around. I think it's a respectable rogue deck. It may not even be the best version of Sprite, but I do think it's cool, and I think Tri-Brigade variants in general float around a little bit right now. This card's really cool. It has a lot of power, especially in pure, like more pure Tri-Brigade variants, because you can send itself to be just a Forbidden Chalice. You can send one of your traps to just become a compulsory evacuation device as a quick play spell, or it gets you access to your engine by being able to dump stuff like kit straight from the deck, which is very huge as well. So very, very cool synergy here. It's not a huge buff, but it is a nice card, and I hope that it ends up seeing a little bit of play, because I do think it's something like worth messing around with. Dinomorphia. They get a new trap card. It protects their plays. It's really nice. It gives them just another layer of protection from like losing to Ash Blossom a little bit harder. So that's pretty nice there. Nothing too crazy though. Sakitama. This is interesting. I think one of the most noteworthy ones will probably be like Exo Sister, because this card is just a light level 4 that just extends itself onto the field from hand. So it is an extender that allows you to like play through Interruption with Exo Sister, which is nice. You know, there's a couple of other decks. Technically, this card could see good play in something like Tellarknight we talked about earlier, but I don't know. It's a cool card. It's just a good extender. It doesn't even special. It actually normals itself from hand via its own effect, which is cool. I don't know if we'll see it come up too much, but it is a cool extender that's worth noting. It could come up down the line. We'll have to see. And then we get to the generic cards. So there's 2 generic cards that I think really are going to be very interesting in how they affect the format. The first one is Chaos Angel. This card can take any 2 light or dark monsters as long as they add up to level 10 or higher. Or not or higher. Level 10 exactly. But they have to be light or dark. And you do not even need a tuner. That's the craziest part here. So now any Chaos attribute deck now can make this card, and just on summon it banishes a card. It's not once per turn, so if you can reborn it, you can banish another card. He gets protection depending on which attribute specifically used to make him, so he's even harder to out as a 3,500 attack monster. This card is a house. I'm actually very curious to see how this card ends up affecting the metagame and what decks specifically end up trying to make him. But he is very scary at this point. I'm very excited to kind of mess around with him. And the last one here is Trap Track. This card is going, I think, super under the radar, and I cannot believe it. Here's what this card does. It targets a monster you control, destroys it, and then if you did, you get to set any normal trap from your deck. It can be activated that turn, but you can only activate 1 more trap for the rest of the turn after this card resolves. So pretty much what this card is another form of Trap Trick. Now, Trap Trick doesn't give up a monster, so that's obviously a downside here, adding that to your cost. But of course, depending on the deck you play, if you play Dinomorphia, you're going to pop a monster and it's going to float into more. You're not too pissed about it, right? Or other decks, Unchained, stuff like that. And the real use I see for this is probably as a side deck card for going first. Being able to not have to play Trap Trick plus multiple copies of the cards you want to Trap Trick for is really nice. I mean, if you could play just, 1 Eradicator Epidemic Virus, but then play 2 or 3 of this, and then you're able to just, go right into Eradicator if it's like obviously a setup where it's going to be really powerful, or if not, you can just grab something else, which is totally fine. Like a basic trap, an imperm even, or you know what I mean, some other normal trap that's just like decent that you might already be playing in your main deck. I don't know, but I do think there is going to be something that comes up with this card down the line. I'm very curious to see what that ends up being, but I think this one's floating a little bit too under the radar. I really think it could be a powerful side deck card, and then even in certain decks, a main deck card, depending on how they want to run. But very, very powerful. So yeah. That's pretty much it. Those are the only 2 real generic bombs that we have there. Also keep in mind we're going to have other OCG imports and TCG exclusive cards when we're probably like 2 weeks away from the set coming out. So obviously stuff could potentially be added to this list. But for right now, this is the stuff that I think is really going to affect the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame in the TCG when CYBERSTORM Access drops. So yeah, that's mostly everything for today, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below on how this stuff is, you know, worrying you, or what you're excited to play with or mess around with. Maybe something that I didn't have on this list that you thought might, you know, be in the set that could, you know, end up being something worth noting for the competitive scene. But I'm out of here for today. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.